John D. Rockefeller called it the law of God and of nature. Ronald Reagan called it the magic of the market, right? It is this idea that out there, if we just turn over our fate to this magical force, then we're off the hook. And that's really well and good because, gosh, putting these flawed human beings on the hook to sort things out could never work. From that point, then, the spiral keeps going. And of course, then once we turn over our fate to this magical force, it's not any kind of magical force, that is, not any kind of market. It's this peculiar notion that a market can work driven by one rule. And I've started calling it in my current, in getting a grip, I call it one rule economics. Highest return to existing wealth. Well, highest return to existing wealth, what does that do? Duh. It inexorably concentrates and concentrates and concentrates wealth. And in the process of writing Getting a Grip, I learned about Lizzie Magie. Have you heard about Lizzie Magie? She is a real hero of mine. She lived in the early part of the 20th century, a very astute Quaker woman who thought that a board game would be a really clever way to show people what happens with one rule economics. She called it landlord, I think, or real estate or something like that. What happened is that you could see how property moved all into one person's hand and then the game was over. And so she wanted to teach people about this fundamental logic, illogic of one rule economics. Well, you kind of guess where I'm going. It got into the hands of Parker Brothers, it became monopoly, and then it proved her point as now there are about 3 or 4 game makers in the world who control most of the market and board games. And nobody ever heard of Lizzie Magie. Another piece of this positive message is to make clear to people that the game is not over. Most people think that corporate globalization is all said and done. And they think, oh, that's it. There is no more strawberry swirl. There's no more lemon lime. There is no more chocolate chip. That's what Thomas Friedman told us. There's only free market capitalism, in other words, corporate globalization, or North Korea. So one of the beauties, I think, one of the great beauty of what aspects, beautiful aspects of what you're doing, you're saying, no. It's not all tied up. This is not it. Thomas Friedman, you're wrong. There is a living economy movement, a democratic economics that is moving from Pioneer Valley, that is moving from rural Bangladesh, and is moving in the landless workers movement in Brazil. And it understands that economics that meets our deep need for basic necessities depends on democracy. Government, democratic government, and a market are in contest. They are good buddies. That's why we have to step up and create a democratic polity. And so, just in that vein, I want to mention this figure in terms of democratic economics, that the number of people who are members of cooperatives in the world has doubled in the last 30 years. And there are now more people who are members of cooperatives in the world than there are people who own shares in publicly traded companies. It is not over. It is only beginning, is what I really want to leave you with. And you are part of that beginning.